I never imagined the end of my life as I knew it would arrive with a perfectly chilled bottle of 2015 Montrachet and a polite smile from my own son. We were seated at the long mahogany dining table in the Greenwich house, the same table where my late husband Richard and I had celebrated 42 wedding anniversaries. Crystal glasses caught the light from the Waterford chandelier. Marcus raised his glass first. "Ma'am," he said, voice smooth as the private equity pitches he gave to billionaires. "We already transferred the title yesterday. The locks were changed this morning while you were at your annual physical. Selina and I thought it would be cleaner this way." Selina, perched beside him in a cream silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly pension, gave me that curated influencer smile, all teeth, no warmth. "It's a gorgeous assisted living community in Stamford. They have bridge nights and a full-time nurse. You'll love it, Eleanor." I sat very still. The wine in my glass remained untouched. My fingers rested on the linen napkin, knuckles white. But my face stayed calm. Years of boardroom negotiations with Richard had taught me that much. Never let them see the blade go in. Marcus slid an envelope across the polished wood. "Just some paperwork, standard stuff. You signed the power of attorney 2 years ago, remember? When we all agreed your memory was slipping." I opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a single sheet, a court petition already filed, asking a judge to declare me mentally incompetent and place me under permanent guardianship. Their guardianship. My heart did not race. It simply adjusted, like a scale tipping in slow motion. "Oh," I said, voice even. "You moved quickly." Selina laughed, a light trill. "We had to, Eleanor. The market's volatile. We need to protect the assets. The trust is $47 million after all. You wouldn't want it mismanaged." Marcus nodded, pouring himself another glass. "Exactly. We're family. This is love, Mum. Tough love." I folded the petition once, twice, and placed it beside my plate. The numbers floated through my mind. The house valued at $14.2 million. The trust yielding roughly $1.8 million annually in dividends. The investment accounts I had quietly tracked for decades. All of it now allegedly beyond my control. I stood. My knees did not tremble. "I'll need a few things from upstairs." "Already packed," Selina said brightly. "One suitcase. We kept it reasonable. The rest will be handled by the movers tomorrow." Marcus checked his Rolex. "Car service is waiting outside. They'll take you to the Airbnb we booked for the transition. 2 weeks max, then Stamford." I walked to the foyer. The suitcase, my old Louis Vuitton, the one Richard bought me in Paris, sat by the door like an afterthought. I picked it up. It weighed almost nothing. At the threshold I paused and looked back. Marcus and Selina were already clearing the table, laughing about the new kitchen renovation they planned. $400,000 for imported Italian marble. "Marcus," I said quietly. He glanced up, impatient. "Yes?" I met his eyes. "You forgot one thing." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" I smiled. Just a small curve of the lips. I still remember how to read a bank statement. Then I stepped outside into the cool Connecticut evening. The car service driver took my suitcase without a word. As we pulled away from the stone mansion that had been my home for 47 years, I watched the lights in the windows fade. Inside my purse, the folded petition crinkled softly. That night, in a sterile Airbnb studio that smelled of fresh paint and someone else's lavender diffuser, I sat at the tiny kitchen counter and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark. I still had access to one old joint account, the one Marcus thought he had closed. A trickle of $1,200 monthly from a forgotten pension Richard had set up decades ago. Enough for now. I began to type notes, dates, amounts. The $2.3 million wire that had disappeared into consulting fees last quarter. The credit cards cancelled without notice. The dividends rerouted to an account in Selina's maiden name. My fingers moved steadily. No tears. Tears were for women who still believed in apologies. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Mom, the trust fund is now under new management. Stop embarrassing yourself. The petition is just a formality. Sign it, and we can all move on." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I saved the screenshot. The next morning, I walked 3 blocks to a small cafe and ordered black coffee. While it cooled, I made 2 calls. First, to a paralegal whose name I found on a senior advocacy website. Cheap, discreet. Second, to the bank. I asked for every statement from the past 36 months. By noon, the paralegal, a nervous young woman named Claire, met me in the cafe's back corner. She spread the documents across the table like tarot cards. Her eyes widened as she flipped pages. "Mrs. Voss," she said, voice low, "this isn't just incompetence. This is felony-level fraud. Forged signatures, hidden accounts. They even used your old notary stamp." I sipped my coffee. It had gone cold. "Tell me what I need," I said. Claire leaned in. "Evidence. More evidence. And a real attorney, but this could get expensive." I looked out the window at the quiet street. Somewhere in the distance, the mansion's new owners were probably measuring for curtains. I smiled again. That same small curve. "Money," I said softly, "is not the problem anymore." Claire blinked. "But you said your accounts—" "I still have one card," I replied. "One they never knew about. Richard's old Centurion. It's been dormant, but it's still mine." I slid the black card across the table. The metal caught the light like a blade. Claire's mouth opened, then closed. I stood, leaving cash for the coffee. "Start the file," I told her, quietly. "I want every transaction traced, every email, every lie." As I walked back to the Airbnb, the petition burned in my purse like a live coal. I had spent decades being the quiet mother, the perfect widow, the woman who signed whatever her son asked because family meant trust. That woman was gone. In her place walked someone colder, someone who counted every dollar they had stolen, and someone who had just begun to calculate the exact price of betrayal. I opened the door to the studio, set my purse down, and stared at the blank wall. The ground had not yet shifted, but it would. I stepped back into the Airbnb studio and closed the door with a soft click. The room felt smaller than it had the night before. Beige walls, a lumpy couch, and the faint chemical scent of new carpet. My suitcase still sat unopened by the narrow bed. 48 hours, they had said. The movers would arrive at the Greenwich house tomorrow to finish what they started. I set my purse on the counter and pulled out the thick folder Claire had given me. Bank statements. 23 months of them, printed in crisp black ink. I laid them across the tiny table like evidence on a morgue slab. 2 years ago, it had begun so quietly. I remembered the afternoon Marcus had driven me to the lawyer's office. "Mom, you're 70 next year," he'd said, one hand on the wheel of his black Range Rover. "Richard would want the trust protected. Your memory, it's not what it was." He had smiled the same polished smile from the dinner table. I had signed the power of attorney because he was my only child. Because family. Now I saw the pattern in the numbers. First, the Amex Black Card, cancelled without notice. I had tried to pay for groceries at the organic market on Putnam Avenue. Declined. The cashier had given me that pitying look while I fumbled for cash. Marcus later told me it was for my own good. Security risk, he claimed. Then the dividends. $187,000 every quarter from the trust's blue-chip holdings. Rerouted. I found the first missing deposit in last year's March statement. Gone. Replaced by a vague line item labelled Management Fee, Voss Equity Partners. $187,000. Exactly the amount that should have hit my personal account. I picked up my phone and began photographing each page. Click, click. The flash lit the sterile room in sharp white bursts. My hands did not shake. I had spent decades managing trusts for other families. I knew what a clean paper trail looked like. This one was filthy. The Airbnb's single window overlooked a quiet side street. Outside, a neighbor walked a golden retriever. Normal life. Mine had been packed into one suitcase and shipped here like unwanted furniture. I kept photographing, page after page. The $2.3 million wire transfer to a shell company in Delaware. Consulting services. Marcus's firm. No contract attached. The credit cards he had quietly closed one by one, Visa, MasterCard, even the old department store account I used for charity gifts. Each cancellation letter had my forged signature at the bottom. I recognized the slight tremble in the E of Eleanor. He had practiced. By late afternoon, the folder was empty and my phone full of images. I uploaded them to a new encrypted drive. Cost? $9.99 a month. Pocket change compared to what they had taken. The $1,200 pension deposit had hit that morning. My only income now. I transferred $400 to the Airbnb host for the extra week I would need. The rest I would stretch. Coffee, bread, cheese. No restaurants. No bridge nights. No garden club luncheons where the other widows would ask why I no longer lived in the stone mansion on North Street. I sat on the edge of the couch and closed my eyes for exactly 30 seconds. Not to cry, to calculate. 47 years in that house. Richard and I had raised Marcus there. I had planted the rose garden the summer he turned 10. Now Selina wanted it ripped out for an infinity pool. I had seen the architect's plans in the envelope they slid across the table. $400,000 renovation, paid for with my trust money. My phone buzzed on the table. A new message from Marcus. Mom, the trust fund is now under new management. Stop embarrassing yourself. The petition is just a formality. Sign it and we can all move on. I read it twice. Then I saved the screenshot, added it to the folder labelled Communications, and set the phone down. Claire had warned me this would happen. After she had whispered the words felony-level fraud across the cafe table, she had leaned closer. They moved fast because they're scared. The signatures don't match. The notary stamp is from a company that went out of business in 2021. We can prove it. I had nodded once. How much time do I have? Months, she said. But you need a real attorney, someone who eats sharks for breakfast. I had shown her the Centurion card then. Black metal, heavy. Richard's name still on it, though the bank had quietly renewed it in my name after his death. Limit? $250,000. Never touched. Marcus never knew it existed because Richard had kept it separate. For emergencies only, he used to say with a wink. Claire's eyes had widened. That changes everything. Now, in the dimming light of the studio, I opened my laptop again. I typed an email to the forensic accountant Claire had recommended. Subject line: Urgent review of Voss Family Trust. Potential elder financial abuse. I attached the first batch of photos. $47 million total trust value. $14.2 million house. Annual dividends of $1.8 million. All of it siphoned while I was told I was forgetful. The accountant replied within 43 minutes. I can see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Cash only for the first consult. $750. I wired the money from the Centurion before the bank closed. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. I stood at the window and watched a car pass slowly. For a second I thought it might be Marcus checking to see if I had broken yet. I had not. Instead, I was building a wall of paper, statement by statement, wire by wire, lie by lie. The assisted living brochure they had included in the envelope still sat on the counter. I picked it up, folded it once, and dropped it into the trash bin. The sound it made was soft, final. Tomorrow I would meet the accountant. Tomorrow I would start tracing the Cayman account linked to Selina's maiden name, $940,000 transferred in the last 14 months alone. Tomorrow the paper trail would grow longer and sharper. But tonight I allowed myself one small luxury. I boiled water in the cheap kettle and made a cup of plain black tea. No sugar, no milk, just the bitter heat against my tongue. I sipped it slowly, standing in the middle of the rented room that was now my temporary fortress. Marcus thought he had stripped me of everything. He had only handed me the weapon I needed. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the evening. I knew it would not stay that way. I woke before dawn in the Airbnb studio, the $1,200 pension deposit already showing in my account. I transferred $400 to the host for another week, then opened the laptop and began cancelling every automatic charity withdrawal Marcus had set up in my name, one by one. The Children's Hospital, the Historical Society, the Garden Conservancy, each $5,000 monthly donation that had quietly funneled into accounts he controlled. I clicked revoke on 17 separate lines. The total saved? $85,000 a year. My year now. The screen glowed in the grey light. I did not feel triumphant. I felt precise. Breakfast was black coffee and a single slice of toast. $3.47 at the corner bodega. I ate standing at the counter, watching the numbers on my spreadsheet grow. The forensic accountant had agreed to meet at 10 a.m. in a back booth at the Silver Spoon Diner on Mason Street. Cash only. No paper trail he could trace yet. I dressed in the same navy cardigan I had worn the night they handed me the suitcase. It still smelled faintly of the Greenwich house, lemon polish and old wood. I slipped the Centurion card into my wallet, then walked the 8 blocks. The air was crisp. My steps were even. The diner smelled of bacon and burnt toast. I slid into the booth across from a man in a rumpled grey suit. Harold Klein, forensic accountant, 63. Eyes like a ledger that never balanced in anyone's favour. Mrs. Voss, he said, keeping his voice low. Show me what you have. I passed him the flash drive under the table. He plugged it into a battered laptop and began scrolling. His coffee sat untouched. For the next 40 minutes he said nothing, just clicked, highlighted, typed notes in a code I could not read. I drank my own coffee slowly. 2 refills, $4.50 total. I counted every dollar. Finally he closed the lid. $47 million in the trust, he said. Your son has moved $11.4 million in the last 22 months. Not sloppy, surgical. Forged wires to Voss Equity Partners. Another $940,000 to an account in the Caymans under your daughter-in-law's maiden name, Selina M. Hargrove. They even backdated the power of attorney documents by 14 months to cover their tracks. I nodded once. And the house? Title transferred 3 days ago. $14.2 million assessed value. They filed it as a gift to avoid taxes. Your signature again. Not yours. The waitress refilled our cups without asking. I waited until she walked away. What can we prove? I asked. Everything, Harold said. Bank statements match the wire logs. The notary who supposedly witnessed your signatures died in 2021. The stamp they used is a digital forgery from a template anyone can buy online for $29.99. They got greedy. Greedy leaves footprints. He slid a single sheet across the Formica. A summary, red ink. $11.4 million highlighted. Next to it, the new kitchen renovation Marcus had posted about yesterday. $400,000 cash, pulled straight from the trust. I stared at the numbers until they burned behind my eyes. Marcus had posted the photo at 7:42 a.m. this morning. I had seen it while waiting for Harold. The old kitchen gutted. Italian marble countertops going in. Selina in the foreground, arms wide. Caption, "New beginnings for the Voss family estate. So grateful to finally make it ours. #legacy. #family first." I had not commented. I had simply screenshotted it and added it to the folder. Harold leaned forward. "You're living on $1,200 a month right now." "Yes." "Most people would have broken by now. Signed whatever they shoved in front of them." I met his eyes. "Most people did not spend 47 years watching their husband build that trust from nothing." He gave a short nod. "Respect." "I'll need another $2,500 to run the full forensic audit. Digital forensics on the deleted emails. Cross-reference every transaction with IRS filings. We'll have a report that will make any judge sit up straight." I slid five $500 bills across the table. Crisp. New. From the Centurion cash advance I had taken yesterday. "Start today." Harold pocketed the cash without counting. "You understand this will get ugly. They'll fight dirty. Guardianship petition. Maybe even try to have you declared incompetent in the press." I folded the summary sheet and placed it in my purse. "Let them." Outside the diner, the sun had broken through. I walked back to the studio the long way, past the small park where I used to push Marcus in his stroller. The bench was still there, empty now. My phone stayed quiet until 3:17 p.m. Then it buzzed on the counter. I picked it up. Marcus. "Mom, the trust fund is now mine. Stop embarrassing yourself." I read the message twice. No exclamation points, no anger, just ownership. As if the $47 million had always belonged to him and I had merely been borrowing it. I saved the screenshot, added it to the growing file labeled Admissions. Then I opened the spreadsheet again. The numbers were stacking now. $11.4 million, $940,000 in the Caymans, $400,000 kitchen, $85,000 in cancelled donations that would no longer bleed away. I closed the laptop and stood at the window. The afternoon light slanted across the beige carpet. My reflection looked back at me, calm, grey-haired, utterly still. Marcus thought he had won. He had only handed me the ledger, and I was just beginning to balance it. The ground beneath my feet still felt unsteady, but for the first time since that dinner, I felt the faintest shift. Not yet. Soon. I did not wait for the ground to shift on its own. The next morning, I sat at the Airbnb counter with the Centurion card in my hand. Black metal, heavy as a verdict. Richard had opened it in 1998 for emergencies only. Marcus had never seen the statements because they went to a post office box in Stamford that I had kept active in my name alone. Annual fee, $5,500. Never missed. Limit still intact at $250,000. I dialed the number on the back. American Express Centurion Concierge. A woman answered, voice polished. "How may I assist you, Mrs. Voss?" "I need the card reactivated," I said. "Full privileges. And I want a replacement sent by courier today." "Certainly. Security question. Maiden name of your first pet?" "Shadow." "Reactivated. Courier will arrive within 3 hours. Is there anything else?" "Yes. Book me an appointment with Victor Hale, elder law attorney, Greenwich office. Today, if possible. Tell his assistant it concerns a 7-figure trust and immediate suspension of power of attorney. She did not ask why. Centurion clients rarely explained themselves. The card arrived at 11:47 a.m. I signed for it, then walked straight to the bank 2 blocks away and withdrew $10,000 in crisp hundreds. No questions, no holds. The teller simply counted and slid the envelope across the counter. By 1:30 p.m., I was sitting in Victor Hale's corner office overlooking the harbour. Glass walls, mahogany desk. The man himself was 61, silver hair, eyes like a hawk that had already eaten the rabbit. His hourly rate? $850. I wrote the retainer check for $25,000 without blinking. "Mrs. Voss," he said, flipping through the forensic summary Harold had delivered that morning. "Your son and daughter-in-law have committed textbook elder financial exploitation. Forged documents, hidden accounts. We can suspend the power of attorney by close of business tomorrow." "Motion filed today." I nodded once. "How fast can you serve him?" "Process server is already on standby. I'll have him hit wherever your son is most visible. Embarrassment is part of the pressure." "Good." Victor leaned back. "They'll counter. Freeze your remaining accounts. Leak stories to the local paper about dementia. Maybe even try to accelerate the guardianship hearing." "Let them," I said. My voice did not rise. "I want every move documented. Bank statements, emails, the Cayman transfers." He smiled. Thin. Sharp. I like clients who understand the game. I left his office with a fresh folder. Motion to suspend power of attorney. Emergency relief requested. Eleanor R. Voss versus Marcus T. Voss. My name first. Their names beneath it like defendants. That same afternoon, Marcus tried to strike first. My phone rang at 4:12 p.m. Unknown number. I answered on speaker while I stood at the studio window. "Mrs. Voss?" A bank manager's voice, nervous. "We've received instructions from your son, acting under power of attorney, to freeze all accounts in your name, including the small pension deposit account. I'm afraid we have to comply until this is resolved." I watched a leaf drift past the glass. "Did you receive those instructions in writing?" "Yes, ma'am. Email from Marcus Voss at 3:47 p.m. Forward it to the email on file for Victor Hale, attorney at law. He will be filing a counter motion within the hour." I hung up without waiting for a reply. At 5:03 p.m., Victor called me back. "Motion filed. Judge signed the temporary suspension order. Your son's power of attorney is now stayed. Accounts unfrozen. And I added a restraining order on any further contact regarding finances." I exhaled once. Not relief, precision. Marcus's next text arrived at 6:19 p.m. "Mom, what the hell is this? Some lawyer just called my office. Call me now." I did not reply. Instead, I opened the spreadsheet and added 2 new lines. Legal retainer, $25,000. Attorney motion filing fee, $1,200. The numbers were no longer bleeding away. They were building a wall. The following morning, I allowed myself one quiet luxury. I walked to the small florist on the corner and bought a single white rose for $4.99. I placed it in a water glass on the counter. It reminded me of the garden I had once tended, the one Selena planned to bulldoze for her infinity pool. At 11 a.m., my phone buzzed again. This time it was Victor. "Process server is en route. Your son is at the Greenwich Country Club. Lunch with his biggest investor, some hedge fund guy from New York." Perfect timing. I closed my eyes for 3 seconds. Not prayer, calculation. I pictured the scene I would never see in person. The oak-panelled dining room, white tablecloths, Marcus in his navy blazer, laughing over the 3rd martini. The server in the cheap black suit approaching the table, the envelope in his hand, the investor watching. Marcus would open it in front of him. He would read the bold header. "Motion to suspend power of attorney and for temporary restraining order." His face would not stay polite. I opened my eyes. The white rose stood perfectly still in its glass. My phone stayed silent for the rest of the afternoon. I knew it would not stay silent for long. The first countermove was complete. The ground had not merely shifted, it had begun to crack beneath their feet. The process server's move at the country club bought me exactly 11 days of silence. Then the walls began to close. It started with a certified letter delivered to the Airbnb at 8:47 a.m. on a grey Thursday. I signed for it in the doorway, the courier's breath fogging in the cold. The envelope was thick, heavy. Return address: Marcus T. Voss, through his new attorneys, the same three-man firm that specialized in high-net-worth divorces and corporate takedowns. I carried it inside without opening it immediately. First, I made coffee, black, $2.19 for the pod. Then I sat at the counter, slipped a knife under the flap, and read. Petition for guardianship of an incapacitated person. They wanted full control. Medical decisions, financial decisions, living arrangements. The petition attached evidence, forged doctor notes from a psychiatrist I had never met. Mild cognitive impairment, early-stage dementia. Recommended. Immediate placement in assisted living and appointment of Marcus and Selina as co-guardians. I read the dollar figures attached to the petition. Their requested guardian fee, $12,000 per month. Paid from the trust, of course. My trust. I set the papers down and stared at the single white rose in its glass. It had begun to droop. My phone rang at 9:22 a.m. Victor Hale. They filed at 8:15 this morning, he said, voice tight. Same judge who granted our temporary suspension. They're pushing for an emergency hearing in 14 days. I did not answer right away. I opened my spreadsheet instead and added a new line. Guardianship petition filed. Day 11 of counteroffensive. How much damage can they do before the hearing? I asked. Plenty. They've already stopped paying the property taxes on the Greenwich house. First quarter due in 9 days. $187,400. They're letting it slide into delinquency on purpose. Plan is foreclosure, then they buy it back cheap through a shell LLC. Clean title. No gift tax issues. I pictured the stone mansion, the rose garden I had planted the year Marcus turned 10, the marble terrace where Richard and I used to drink gin and tonics at sunset. Anything else? I said. They leaked the medical records to the Greenwich Times. Front page of the online edition this morning. Prominent widow's family seeks guardianship amid concerns over mental decline. No names in the headline, but everyone knows. I opened the browser on my laptop. The article was already live. Photo of the house from the street. My name in the second paragraph. Sources close to the family confirmed the dementia diagnosis. Selina had even been quoted anonymously. We only want what's best for Eleanor. She deserves peace in her golden years. I closed the tab. Victor, I said, voice level. File the opposition today. Attach Harold's full forensic report, every wire, every forged signature, and request an immediate accounting of the trust. Already drafting, he replied. But Eleanor, they're escalating fast. They know the hearing is coming. I ended the call. That afternoon I drove past the house for the first time since the dinner. I parked 3 blocks away on a side street lined with old maples and walked the rest of the way on foot. No one recognized me in the plain grey coat and scarf. The front gate stood open. A construction crew in orange vests was tearing out the rose garden. Shovels bit into the soil I had turned by hand 40 years earlier. A dump truck waited at the curb. Selina stood on the new marble terrace in a white hard hat, gesturing toward the back lawn where surveyors had staked out the infinity pool. $400,000 renovation already in progress. Paid for with trust money that was still legally mine. I watched from behind a hedge. One rose bush, the pale pink one Richard had given me on our 30th anniversary, was yanked up by the roots and tossed into the truck. Dirt scattered across the driveway like dried blood. I did not move. I did not cry. I simply memorized the scene, then turned and walked back to my car. The $1,200 pension hit the next morning. I transferred $187,400 from the reactivated Centurion account straight to the town tax collector's office. Paid in full. Receipt emailed to Victor within minutes. Let them try to foreclose now. Marcus's next text arrived at 6:41 p.m. You're making this ugly, Mom. The paper is already calling. Sign the guardianship papers and we can keep this private. $300,000 quiet settlement. Take it, or we go to court and you lose everything. I saved the screenshot, added it to the file. Then I drove to the storage facility on the edge of town, the one place I still kept Richard's old archives. Blueprints, trust documents, original power of attorney papers from 1998, the safe deposit key. Everything that could prove the forgeries. I paid the monthly fee in cash, $87. The unit smelled of dust and old paper. I stood inside for 10 minutes, touching the boxes, making sure nothing had been disturbed. The next morning, the eviction notice was taped to my Airbnb door. Not the studio, the storage unit. Unit 214. Unpaid fees and unauthorized occupancy claim by co-owner Marcus Voss under power of attorney. Eviction in 72 hours. All contents will be auctioned. I pulled the notice down slowly. The paper was cheap, the ink already smudged from the morning dew. Marcus had found it. He had gone after the last vault. Inside those boxes were the original notary logs, the wire transfer confirmations with Richard's handwritten notes, the one document that could unravel every lie they had told the court. I folded the notice once and placed it in my purse beside the Centurion card. The walls were closing in tighter now. The garden was gone. The taxes had been a warning shot. The newspaper story had painted me as frail and confused. And now they wanted the archives, the final proof. I stood in the doorway of the studio and looked at the calendar on the wall. 13 days until the guardianship hearing. 13 days until they tried to take the last of me. I closed the door, sat at the counter, and opened the laptop. Harold's next report was due in 4 hours. Victor had already scheduled a press counter-statement for tomorrow. I typed a single line into the spreadsheet. Storage unit eviction notice received. Day 19. Then I added another line beneath it. Cost to fight, whatever it takes. My hands stayed steady on the keys. They had ripped out the roses. They had leaked my name across the town. They had come for the last boxes that held my husband's handwriting. But they had not yet taken the woman who remembered every single number. The ground beneath me was shaking harder now. I was still standing, and I had just begun to push back with everything I had left. I did not waste a single hour on panic. The eviction notice for the storage unit sat on the counter like a live grenade. 72 hours until they auctioned everything Richard had left behind. The original trust papers, the handwritten wire notes, the notary logs that would prove every forgery. Marcus had found the last vault. I opened my laptop at 7:03 a.m. and transferred the final $18,000 from the Centurion cash reserve. Not to the town tax office, not to the Airbnb. Straight to 2 new names. First, Lena Morales, private investigator, former FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Rate $9,500 upfront. Second, Dr. Raj Patel, digital forensics expert, ex-IRS contractor. Rate $8,500 for 48-hour turnaround. I wired the money before the bank opened. Then I drove to the storage facility, paid the $87 fee in cash to store the eviction, and stood inside Unit 214 for exactly 9 minutes. I touched the first box, the one labelled 1998 Trust Formation, in Richard's neat hand, and whispered to it like an old friend. "Hold on." Lena arrived at the Airbnb at 10:15 a.m. Tall, black coat, no makeup. She did not waste words. "Show me the unit," she said. We drove together in her unmarked sedan. She photographed every lock, every timestamp on the eviction notice, then swept the entire space with a handheld scanner. "They accessed the visitor log yesterday at 4:12 p.m., she said. "Your son's assistant signed in under a fake name. We have them on camera." Raj met us back at the studio at noon. He set up a portable clean room station on the tiny table. 2 laptops, external drives, a Faraday bag. I handed him the flash drive containing every bank statement I had copied. "Deleted emails from your son's firm server," he said after 40 minutes of silent typing. "They thought they wiped them. They were wrong." He turned the screen toward me. There they were. Clean. Time-stamped. Irrefutable. An email from Marcus to his accountant, dated 14 months ago. "Backdate the POA docs. Mom won't notice. Use the old notary template." Another from Selena. "Wire another $220,000 to my Cayman account. Label it Consulting. Eleanor's name on the memo line for cover." A chain of 6 messages discussing the forged signatures, complete with practice scans of my handwriting attached as JPEGs. Raj leaned back. Plus the wire logs. $940,000 total to Selena M. Hargrove, Cayman National Bank, account number ending in 7742. Every transfer approved under the suspended power of attorney. Lena slid a second folder across the table. I pulled her influencer contracts too. 3 brands dropped her this morning after the guardianship story broke. Sponsors don't like elder abuse headlines. I stared at the evidence. $940,000. 14 months. My money. My name forged on every page. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Marcus. I pressed record before I answered. The phone lay flat on the counter between us. Lena and Raj watched in silence. "Mom," he said, voice tight but still trying for that polished tone. "This has gone far enough. The hearing is in 11 days. You're embarrassing the family name." I said nothing. He kept talking. "Look, I'm willing to be reasonable. $300,000. Cash. Wire it today from the trust, and we drop the guardianship petition. You keep the pension, we keep the house. Everyone wins." I let the silence stretch 3 full seconds. 300,000, I repeated, flat. "Yes. Take it, or we go to court, and you lose the house, the trust, everything. The judge already saw the dementia notes. You'll end up in Stamford whether you like it or not." I looked at Lena. She gave a single nod, recording still running. "Marcus," I said quietly, "you offered to help me with $700 a month when you first took the power of attorney. Now you want to give me $300,000 to go away quietly." He laughed once, nervous. "It's a good deal, Mom. Sign the settlement agreement my lawyers emailed you this morning. End this nonsense." I let him finish. Then I said, "I will review the agreement." He exhaled, relieved. "Smart choice. Call me when it's signed." I ended the call. The red recording light stopped. Lena saved the file, encrypted it, and emailed it to Victor with one line. "Admitted offer of settlement in exchange for dropping criminal exposure." Raj closed his laptop. "We have enough for felony charges now. Wire fraud, forgery, identity theft. The Cayman account alone triggers IRS reporting requirements they never met." I paid them the balance in cash from the Centurion. $18,000 exactly. Gone. But the vault was open. That evening, I drove to Victor Hale's office alone. The harbour lights glittered outside his glass walls. He was waiting with a fresh pot of coffee and 3 new folders. I placed the thumb drive on his desk, the recorded call, the deleted emails, the Cayman wires, the storage unit security footage. Victor opened the first folder, scanned the top page and let out a low whistle. "Mrs. Voss," he said, "this is burial material." He slid a single folder across the polished desk toward me. Inside, the amended opposition brief, now 87 pages thick. Every exhibit tabbed in red, every dollar accounted for. "We don't settle," he said, voice low and final. "We bury them." I closed the folder and met his eyes. The hearing was 9 days away now. The garden was gone. The newspaper story still lived online. The storage unit eviction clock ticked at 71 hours remaining. But on the table between us lay the evidence that would end it. Marcus had offered me $300,000 to disappear. I had recorded every word. And the man who had just spoken those 3 perfect words, "We bury them," was the best $850 an hour weapon money could buy. I stood up, shook Victor's hand once, and walked out into the cold Connecticut night. The ground beneath my feet was no longer shaking. It was beginning to open wide beneath them. I stepped into the Superior Court of Connecticut at 8:47 a.m., wearing the same strand of pearls Richard gave me on our wedding day, cool against my collarbone. One small chip on the clasp from the night he fastened them 48 years earlier. No makeup, no new dress, just the navy cardigan, the grey coat, and the black centurion card tucked flat in my purse like a loaded round. The hallway smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat. Bailiffs moved quietly. Lawyers in dark suits checked their watches. I carried nothing but a single thin folder Victor Hale had handed me the night before. 87 pages, every exhibit tabbed in red. Marcus arrived at 9:12 a.m. He strode down the marble corridor with 3 attorneys flanking him like bodyguards. Navy suit sharp enough to cut glass. Selina followed 2 steps behind in cream silk, eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses, even though the sun had not yet cleared the roofline. Marcus spotted me and slowed. His smile tried to stay confident. It did not quite reach his eyes. "Mom," he said, voice low enough that only his lawyers heard. "Last chance. Sign the settlement. 300,000. Walk away." I looked at him for 3 full seconds. The pearls felt heavier now. "No," I said. One of his attorneys cleared his throat. "Mr. Voss, the courtroom is this way." They filed in first. I waited until the door closed, then followed alone. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Dark wood benches, American flag limp in the corner. Judge Harlan Bennett, already seated, 68, steel grey hair, face like a man who had heard every lie twice. He nodded once at Victor, then at me. "Voss guardianship matter," the clerk announced. Petitioner Marcus Voss and Selina Voss versus respondent Eleanor Voss. Marcus's lead attorney stood first. He laid out their case like a well-rehearsed script. Mild cognitive impairment, inability to manage affairs, the forged doctor notes, the need for immediate protection of the $47 million trust. He even mentioned the newspaper article as if it were fact instead of their leak. Victor did not interrupt. He simply waited. When it was our turn, he stood and said 4 words. "Your Honor, the evidence." Then he began. One by one, the exhibits went up on the screen. Exhibit 1, the Power of Attorney document. Side-by-side signatures. Mine from 1998, their version from 2 years ago. The notary stamp that belonged to a man dead since 2021. The judge leaned forward. Exhibit 2, the wire transfers. $11.4 million total. 14 separate wires to Voss Equity Partners. each one labelled management fee with no contract attached. Victor read the amounts aloud. $2.3 million, $1.8 million, $940,000, straight to the Cayman account in Selina's maiden name. The judge's eyebrows rose a fraction. Marcus shifted in his seat. His left hand clenched once on the table. Exhibit 3, the deleted emails. Raj's forensic recovery projected in full colour. Marcus's own words. Backdate the POA docs.
Mom won't notice.
Selina's reply. Wire another $220,000 to my Cayman account. Label it consulting. Eleanor's name on the memo line for cover. The courtroom stayed silent except for the soft click of the projector. Victor played the recorded call. My voice calm. Marcus's voice offering $300,000 to make it all go away. Take it or we go to court and you lose everything. The judge's face did not change, but his eyes moved to Marcus and stayed there. Marcus's smile had cracked. The polished private equity partner who had once toasted new beginnings over Montrachet now looked like a man watching his own ledger burn in slow motion. Selina's hand found his under the table. Her knuckles were white. Victor finished with the storage unit footage. Time-stamped. Marcus's assistant signing in under a false name. The eviction notice taped to my door the next morning. Your Honour, Victor said quietly, this is not protection. This is theft. Systematic, documented, felony level. He sat down. The judge turned to Marcus's table. Response? Their lead attorney tried. He sputtered about family disagreements, about my emotional state, about how the numbers were taken out of context. He even suggested the Cayman account was a legitimate investment. Victor stood again. One line. Every transfer carries Mrs. Voss's forged signature. Every single one. The judge looked down at the stack of exhibits. He removed his glasses, rubbed the bridge of his nose. Then he looked directly at me for the first time. Mrs. Voss, he said, voice even, you have heard the evidence presented today. The court has seen clear indications of financial exploitation. Before I rule on the guardianship petition, I need to ask you one question directly. The courtroom held its breath. Marcus stared at me. His face had gone pale under the courtroom lights. The judge continued. Do you wish to pursue criminal charges against your son and daughter-in-law? I felt the pearls cool against my skin. The same pearls I had worn when Richard slipped the ring on my finger. The same pearls I had worn the day Marcus was born. I stood slowly. My knees did not tremble. My voice did not rise. I looked straight at the judge and spoke one word. Yes. The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed. No sound came out. Selina's sunglasses slipped down her nose. Her eyes were wide. The judge nodded once, slow and final. Then this matter will be referred to the state's attorney for criminal investigation. Guardianship petition is denied. All assets remain under Mrs. Voss's control pending full accounting. Mr. Voss, your power of attorney is permanently revoked. He banged the gavel once. I remained standing. The pearls caught the overhead light like small, quiet stars. The ground had not merely shifted, it had split wide open beneath them, and I was still standing on solid stone. The gavel's echo had barely died when the courtroom erupted into controlled chaos. Marcus shot up from his chair. His navy suit jacket caught on the edge of the table and jerked him back half a step. Your Honour, this is outrageous. She's not competent to... Judge Bennett did not raise his voice. He simply looked at Marcus the way a banker looks at a bounced cheque. Mr. Voss, you are now represented by counsel in a criminal referral. I suggest you sit down and speak only through your attorneys. Selina's hand flew to her mouth. The oversized sunglasses slid down her nose and clattered onto the defense table. For the first time since the dinner with the Montrachet, she looked small. Victor Hale was already on his feet beside me. Your Honor, we request immediate asset freeze on all accounts controlled by Marcus T. Voss and Selina M. Voss, pending the criminal investigation. The trust returns to Mrs. Voss's sole management, effective immediately. Granted, the judge said. Clerk, prepare the order. Bailiff, escort the parties out. I stood perfectly still while the papers were signed. The pearls lay cool against my throat. No smile, no tears, just the quiet click of the Centurion card in my purse as I turned toward the door. The hallway outside was narrower than I remembered. Marble floor, fluorescent lights. Marcus and his 3 attorneys spilled out first. Selina trailed behind, phone already to her ear, voice cracking as she tried to salvage what was left of her influencer contracts. Marcus saw me and lunged forward. One of his lawyers grabbed his arm, but he shook it off. Mom, Eleanor, please. His voice cracked on my name. This is going to ruin us. The firm, the investors, they're already calling. Freeze the accounts and we lose everything. The house, the cars, the... He stopped. His eyes darted left and right, checking for witnesses. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of the same cologne he had worn since business school. I'll give it all back, he whispered. The $11.4 million. The Cayman money. The kitchen renovation. We'll tear it out today. Just drop the criminal charges. Please. I'm begging you. I looked at him. Not the polished private equity son who had toasted new beginnings. Just a 42-year-old man whose empire was collapsing in real time. I said nothing. He kept going, words tumbling faster. Selina's sponsors already pulled 3 contracts this morning. They saw the headlines. We're down $2.7 million in frozen assets already. The bank called me in the hallway. They're locking the trust accounts as we speak. Mom, I'm your son. I adjusted the strap of my purse. The Centurion card shifted inside it like a quiet promise. You stopped being my son the day you changed the locks, I said. My voice was low, steady, the same tone I had used when I told Richard I would manage the trust after he was gone. You became a line item. Victor appeared at my elbow. Mrs. Voss, the order is signed. All accounts are now under your control. The mansion is being transferred back into the trust within the hour. Would you like me to accompany you? I shook my head once. I need to do this alone. Marcus reached out as if he might touch my arm. I stepped back. The hallway lights caught the panic in his eyes. Mom. I turned and walked away. My heels clicked on the marble exactly as they had the night I left the Greenwich house with one suitcase. I did not look back. 11 months and 6 days had passed since I last crossed the threshold of the stone mansion on North Street. The key still fit. The deadbolt turned with the same soft thunk I remembered from every evening Richard came home. I pushed the heavy door open and stepped inside. The air smelled wrong. Fresh paint and new marble dust. The foyer chandelier was the same, but the rose garden outside the tall windows was gone. Just raw dirt and stakes where the infinity pool would have gone. Construction tarps covered half the living room floor. The mahogany dining table, where they had served me the Montrachet and the petition, still sat in its place, but the chairs had been replaced with sleek modern ones that looked cheap against the old wood. I walked slowly through the rooms. My footsteps echoed. In the kitchen, the Italian marble counters gleamed under plastic sheeting. $400,000 of my money, half installed. I ran one finger across the edge and left a faint print in the dust. Upstairs, the master bedroom had been stripped. My old 4-poster bed was gone. In its place stood a king-size platform with chrome legs. Selina's taste. The walk-in closet still held a few of my winter coats, pushed to the back like afterthoughts. I did not stop there. I went straight to the study at the end of the hall, the room Richard had called his sanctuary. The built-in safe was hidden behind the same walnut panelling. The combination had never changed: our wedding date, the day Marcus was born, and the year we bought the house. I dialed it slowly. The lock clicked open. Inside sat the usual things: the original trust documents, the blue-chip stock certificates, Richard's old passport. But at the very back, behind a stack of yellowed envelopes, lay a plain, white, letter-sized envelope I had never seen before. My name was written on it in Richard's handwriting. I carried it to the desk, sat in his old leather chair, and opened it with the silver letter opener that still bore his initials. Inside was a single sheet of heavy cream stationery, dated 3 weeks before he died. Eleanor, if you're reading this, then Marcus has tried something. I always knew he might. There is a second trust, irrevocable, hidden offshore, $18.7 million, that was never listed in the main documents. It activates only if the primary trust is ever challenged or transferred without your explicit written consent after my death. The activation code is in the bottom drawer of this desk, taped under the pencil tray. Use it. Protect yourself. And remember, money never bought us anything we couldn't have lived without. You were always the stronger one. I love you, Richard. My hands stayed perfectly steady. I read the letter twice. Then I reached into the drawer, lifted the pencil tray, and found the small flash drive taped there. $18.7 million. A second trust. Hidden. Waiting. I closed the safe, folded the letter, and slipped it into my purse beside the Centurion card. The house was mine again. The assets were unfreezing under my name. Marcus and Selina were already watching their world collapse in real time. Frozen accounts, cancelled contracts, criminal investigators on the way. But this letter changed the math entirely. I stood up, walked back through the ruined garden, and paused at the front door. The late afternoon light slanted across the empty rose beds. I stepped outside and pulled the heavy door shut behind me. What I had found in the safe would change everything. I closed the front door of the Greenwich mansion for the last time at 5:47 p.m. that same afternoon. The heavy oak thudded shut behind me like a period at the end of a very long sentence. I did not lock it. The trust now owned it again, and the new property manager Victor had hired would handle the rest. The flash drive from Richard's safe sat in my purse next to the letter. $18.7 million. A second irrevocable trust he had set up in 2009, never listed on any public filing, never mentioned to Marcus. Activation code: our wedding date followed by the hospital room number where Marcus was born. I had already called the offshore bank from the study. The funds were released into my sole control within 43 minutes. Bank statements updated in real time. The numbers glowed on my phone screen. $18,700,000 available immediately. I drove straight to Victor Hale's office. He was waiting with fresh coffee and the latest filings from the state's attorney. "Indictment papers came in 30 minutes ago," he said, sliding the documents across the desk. Marcus T. Voss and Selina M. Voss. 14 counts. Wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder financial exploitation. The Cayman account alone triggered federal involvement. Assets frozen nationwide. Their house in Darien, the cars, even the new kitchen renovation, all subject to seizure. I read the top sheet once. Then I signed the consent form allowing full criminal prosecution. "No settlement," I said. "No plea deal. Let the numbers speak." Victor nodded. "The press already has the story. Your name is protected, but theirs won't be." Tomorrow morning the Greenwich Times runs the headline, "Local private equity executive and wife indicted in $11.4 million elder fraud." I stood up. Good. Marcus tried one last time that evening. My phone rang while I was packing the single suitcase I had lived with for 11 months. I let it go to voicemail. The message played on speaker, Mom, Eleanor, the FBI just left my office. They took everything, the accounts, the computers, even Selena's phone. We're ruined. Please. Call the prosecutor. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'm your son. I'll pay you back every cent, I swear. I listened to the entire 2-minute plea without moving. Then I deleted it. The next 72 hours moved like a ledger balancing itself. The trust was restored. Every missing dollar traced and returned. The $400,000 kitchen renovation was halted mid-install. The Italian marble was sold at auction to cover legal fees. The mansion went on the market the following week. Asking price, $14.8 million. It sold in 9 days to a quiet retired couple from Boston. I kept none of the proceeds. They went into the new trust I set up that same afternoon. Victor drafted the documents himself. Irrevocable. Ironclad. Beneficiaries, my 3 grandchildren only. Marcus and Selena named explicitly as excluded persons. No contact, no inheritance, no loopholes. The trustee was a third-party bank in Maine. I signed the final page at Victor's desk and felt the weight of 11 months lift like fog burning off the harbour. On the 14th day after the hearing, I drove north. No moving trucks, no goodbyes. Just the Centurion card, the flash drive, and 1 suitcase. I left the Greenwich house keys on Victor's desk and never looked back. The new house sits on a quiet cove in mid-coast Maine. White clapboard, 3 bedrooms, a screened porch overlooking the water. Purchase price, $1.2 million cash from the hidden trust. No mortgage, no power of attorney. Title in my name alone. The monthly taxes are $1,847. I pay them the day the bill arrives. I wake every morning to the sound of gulls and the slow pull of the tide. No construction noise, no infinity pools. Just water and sky and the faint creak of the wooden porch swing. This morning I sit here with a cup of plain black tea. The same white rose, a fresh one from the local florist, stands in a simple glass on the small table beside me. Steam rises in slow curls. I watch the tide roll in, steady and inevitable, the way justice finally arrived. Marcus and Selena have not contacted me in 37 days. Public records show their Darien house is under foreclosure. Their firm dissolved last week. Selena's influencer accounts were deleted after sponsors cited reputational risk. The last article I saw called it a swift and total fall from grace. I read it once, then closed the browser. The numbers told the story better than any headline ever could. $47 million original trust. $11.4 million stolen. $18.7 million hidden by a man who knew his son too well. 0 forgiven. I take a slow sip of tea. The warmth spreads through my chest the same way quiet satisfaction spreads through a life finally reclaimed. I am 70 years old, widowed, childless in every way that matters now. And for the first time since Richard died, I am completely, perfectly free. The ground had shifted 11 months ago when they handed me the suitcase and the petition. It had cracked open in the courtroom when I said the single word, yes. And today, on this porch with the tide moving beneath me, the ground has settled again. This time, it's settled in my favor. If you have ever watched someone you love turn your life into a line item, if you have ever been told you are too old to understand your own money, then you already know the only real power is the power you keep quiet until the exact right moment. I kept mine, and I used every cent of it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, if it reminded you to check your own accounts tonight, then do one thing for me. Leave a comment with the word shifted. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. The ground can shift for them too. Until next time, this is Eleanor Voss. The tea is still warm, the tide is still moving, and I am exactly where I belong.